We're very fortunate to have a resident historian. Dr. James Capshew earned his undergraduate degree in psychology in our department and has gone on to do amazing things and document much of IU's history, writing 2 fabulous books about Herman Wells, for example. We are pleased to have him here to give an overview of some of our historical points. Jim.
There you go. Context is everything. Universities cannot exist apart from their history. History resides in and gives shape to universities. It provides essential parts of their identity. Over time, it is woven into everything that happens to the people and to the place. It is a vital resource that gives meaning to our shared efforts of teaching and learning and links us to our community, past and present. Everyone here today has a story about your life, a story about your association with IU, a story about why you are here today. My path began in the late 1970s when I was a psychology major who was also employed as a houseman for Chancellor Herman B. Wells. These twin strokes of good fortune led to my presence here today. I embarked on a senior honors thesis about the history of IU psychology, with help from many faculty members, some of whom are here today, especially my advisor, Elliot Hurst. I interviewed Professor R.J. Robert Cantor, who was 90 years old and living in Chicago, and the department invited him to present a colloquium that some people might remember. My research uncovered the fact that William Bryan opened the first psychological laboratory on this campus back in 1888, before he became president in 1902. Bryan was succeeded by none other than my then current housemate, Herman Wells. Dr. Wells and I had many conversations about Dr. Bryan and his great influence on this university. Those experiences in this department, in this university, set my course as a historian of psychology, as well as a researcher in university culture and history. Today, we are celebrating the 125th anniversary, the quasi-centennial, of an event that took place when this campus was new and under new leadership. In 1885, biologist David Starr Jordan, as you've heard, was selected as IU president, and the campus moved to Dunn's Woods. With a faculty of 12 and a student body of 150, Jordan set about shaping the new campus. Abolishing the strict in loco parentis rules for students, he replaced them with 2 admonitions: do not set the buildings on fire, and do not shoot the professors. Those are good ones. Riding the wave of university reform sweeping over the nation, Jordan reorganized the faculty into departments and established the major system for the undergraduate curriculum. He was an apostle of the research ideal, stating, "The highest function of the real university is that of instruction by investigation. And a man who cannot and does not investigate cannot train investigators." But without the advantages conferred by geographical location, endowed wealth, or accumulated prestige, Indiana was hard-pressed to find faculty members to compete against the emerging elite of American research universities. So the charismatic Jordan took a page out of the state's agricultural heritage and populated faculty with homegrown talent. He promised outstanding undergraduates that they could become faculty members after they obtained their doctorates, either in Eastern universities or in Europe. Among the gifted students Jordan recruited was Bloomington native William Bryan. An 1884 graduate of the ancient classics curriculum, Bryan became interested in the new psychology based on laboratory experimentation. Soon after Jordan assumed the presidency, Bryan was hired as an acting professor of philosophy and made plans for further study. He turned down a scholarship to study at Hopkins and instead went to Germany, where the new psychology was centered. Bryan studied at the University of Berlin with Herman Ebbinghaus, a noted researcher on human memory. Fired with enthusiasm for the new psychology, he convinced the IU administration to grant $100, which was a lot of money, for the purchase of a hip chronoscope, despite the fact, in his words, the trustees could not imagine what I would do with it. In January 1888, Bryan opened a psychological laboratory, the second one in the United States after Hopkins, and began original research and classroom demonstrations. Within a few months, he reported some results at a scientific meeting. As the sole faculty member in the Department of Philosophy, Bryan reoriented the curriculum towards psychology. Bryan made further plans to study with G. Stanley Hall at Clark University. In the meantime, President Jordan had been lured to California in 1891 to become the inaugural president of Stanford University, taking half of the IU faculty with him. He wanted Bryan to come west, offering a higher salary, but the budding psychologist had other plans and went to Clark. Bryan received his PhD in 1892 at Clark, the second psychology doctorate granted by that university, with a thesis on the development of voluntary motor ability. Back at IU, he continued to build the psychology program and was also appointed the vice president of the university. At that time, there was only one vice president. Not so today. In the 1890s, Bryan and graduate student Noble Harder conducted a major study of motor skill learning, reporting their data by innovative graphics that were soon dubbed learning curves. The Bryan and Harder studies became classics in the field. In 1902, Bryan became president of IU, ending his active research career, but not his support of the psychological sciences at the university. During the next 2 decades, the psychological laboratory flourished in the Department of Philosophy, and Indiana developed a reputation as a major source of psychology undergraduates headed for doctoral programs in other universities. In 1920, the first Indiana doctorates in psychology were awarded. The psychology program grew to include clinical work in 1922 with the opening of the psychological clinic. The Department of Psychology achieved administrative independence from philosophy in 1929 and branched out into new areas, notably comparative and physiological psychology. In 1939, the department hosted the Bryan Symposium to celebrate the jubilee of the lab and Bryan's recent retirement. This is a picture of Edmund Conklin, the chair of the department, and Bryan looking at the hip chronoscope, the first laboratory instrument. Indiana psychology was poised on the edge of far-reaching changes. The Wells administration strongly encouraged research among IU faculty, and the world was about to be plunged into war. World War II was a watershed. Research found a new salience, and the federal government poured money into science and higher education. In 1945, there was a wave of new hires, increasing the faculty to 12. Students flocked to the program, and by the early 1950s, Indiana started producing large numbers of PhDs. According to national rankings, the department reached elite status among its peers in the 1960s, with a faculty of 40 investigating diverse areas. Faculty size remained steady into the 1970s and 80s, while undergraduate enrollments began to climb. The pace of change accelerated Whoop. After the department's centennial 25 years ago, under a succession of dynamic chairs, the department made inroads into faculty gender equity, conducted a massive reinvention of its research and educational areas, built a state-of-the-art brain imaging facility, and changed its name to reflect a turn toward integrative science and interdisciplinary collaboration. These enhancements were made with careful consideration of the shared values that animate the department's academic community and scientific culture. The legacy of Bryan's laboratory experiments, the legacy of teaching of undergraduate students and training of graduate students, the legacy of the clinic and scientific research, as well as public service, the legacy of research in animal behavior, sensory and perceptual systems, social psychology, learning and development, mathematical modeling, speech, cognitive processing, molecular and cognitive neuroscience, all are part of the department's extraordinary record in the cultivation of human talent and potential, a record unmatched by few in breadth and depth anywhere in the United States and nowhere else in length. Such is the heritage of the Psychological Laboratory at Indiana University that we're celebrating today. Whoop. Got one more, there we go. Thank you very much.